Lately I've been thinking about this life and how it brought me here. Staring at this man in the mirror, I see him often here. Wipe my tears, only if you knew what I was going through. Only if you walked it in my shoes. Certain things don't like to talk about, but I'll always remember the chaos in my mind.
Welcome to the Message Hope Podcast, where the hope stands for hearing other people's experience. My name is Adam.
My name is Mike, and today on the show we have a gentleman who's got a little over 3 years clean. He's originally from Tennessee. He came out here for treatment multiple times, and he ended up staying this time. And it's done well for him. He's got 3 years clean now, over 3 years, and he's here with us to tell us his story. Johnny, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for coming.
So just to give a little bit of, for our audience, I work with Johnny. He didn't like me for the first 6 months.
Here we go. Here we go.
Adam's convinced nobody liked him for
Well,
6 months.
he didn't talk to me for the first, I don't know, at least 6 months. He'd walk around and shake and give everybody a hug and just skip around me.
Just
I'm
skip
like,
you.
I'm like, all right, cool, fuck
That sounds
me.
like something Adam would do.
I was like, all right, cool, whatever.
I'm always uncomfortable. People don't realize it, but
Is it
Now,
his
he
accent?
didn't look too uncomfortable when I seen him. You know what I mean? I was like, all right, cool.
all right. Well, I respect Johnny. I love Johnny, and we want to thank you for getting on the podcast and being willing to come up here. We know that you are not. Well, what I know about you is you're not like a front and center kind of guy.
Yeah.
And I try to tell people all the time. I think that's the cool thing about the podcast. It's not a front and centered thing, right? You're not like there's not 100 other people in this room. It's just us having a conversation, right? And I think, and me and Mike, we talked about it, but it gives people who typically don't share at a meeting like a voice and a platform where they could share comfortably and openly, and it's more detailed than anything else. But yeah,
For sure.
yeah. So thank you for coming on, Johnny.
You're welcome.
And look, if anybody from work hears this, I have asked all of you, and the only people that have come on is JJ.
Yeah.
And then Johnny Stein.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So all
JJ
you other,
did it?
Huh? Yeah, JJ
Yeah,
did it. Yeah, yep. His was good, bro. He had a cool story. So any of my coworkers listening, get on here.
None of them are listening.
Yeah, I know. I know.
All right, Johnny, let's start it off at the beginning, man. Tell us what it was like for you growing up. Where'd you grow up?
Or Tennessee, like so I was like adopted at a young age. My biological parents were drug addicts, both in and out of rehab. My dad's been in and out of prison. He just got out of prison again, and so I was adopted and grew up in Tennessee. But then every weekend I grew up in this little town called Ider, Alabama, and like I said, the population's like 800 people, I think. You know what I mean? So I come from like the sticks, and like I had a great childhood growing up, but man, it started off for me. Like I said, when I was about 12 years old, that's when I first got high. First drug I ever did was meth, so I knew I wasn't bound for greatness right off the bat. You know what I mean? And I started getting high on meth, and then started getting arrested. I actually went to the first rehab when I was 16 years old in this little place called Cumberland Heights in Tennessee.
So the first substance you ever used?
Was meth.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, right to business.
Yeah.
Right to business.
Smoke it, snort it, shoot it.
No, I was never a shooter.
Okay.
I was just a smoker and a snorter.
Okay.
And then hell, this last time I even started eating it.
Yeah.
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 And that's the way I preferred it. That nasty taste in my mouth that's just what did it for me.
Yeah.
As fucked up as that is.
Yeah.
And
So, were you adopted by family members? or-
families, yeah, I was adopted by uncle and my aunt.
Oh, okay.
And so I got to stay in family, which was a good thing.
Right.
But, and then I have a twin sister, so they kept us together.
Okay.
Nice.
So,
Nice.
Did you have cousins that kind of became your siblings at that point?
No, I didn't have very many cousins, like, really, because all my cousins are like, I think I have like 3 or 4 tops. You know what I mean? I have like a small family,
Yeah.
and I never really talked to many of them. I just stuck with either my grandparents or my parents.
Yeah.
I had a brother that was adopted before me by my uncle and my aunt because they couldn't have kids.
Right.
So they adopted him, but he was like 14 years older than me.
Right.
And then supposedly, last I heard, he was living here homeless in San Bernardino.
Oh,
I sent him out. I sent him out
Oh,
here
wow.
to get help in 2017, and he's wanted back in Tennessee, so he'll never go back.
Right.
So He's last I heard. I talked to him 2 days before I got arrested this time, and he was out here in San Bernardino somewhere.
Wow.
Wow.
That's the last I heard from him.
Do you feel like not like having to be raised by other family members like affected you?
I mean,
not having your mom and dad around?
Well, see, that was the thing about me though. Like they would come around and they would come and go. You know what I mean? Like I would go to my grandparents were like the most stable ones. They would come and get us every weekend, and they were my biological mom's parents, and my mom would be there sometimes, and then every once in a blue moon my dad would be there, or they would take me to go see my dad, and it was just nothing was ever consistent, ever, and I mean even to this day, like I talk to them every now and then. You know what I mean? Like, do I call them mom and dad out of respect? Yeah, but like my mom and dad, my adopted parents both died while I was in prison this time.
Yeah.
And 10 months apart, and I couldn't go to the funerals because of COVID. I was right when COVID hit, so I didn't get to go, and that's what broke me. Really, that's what really. I mean, I still kept getting high for about 7 or 8 months, and then finally one day I just woke up sitting in my cell. I was like, "This has got to stop.
Right.
I'm tired." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like 30. I'm about to be 37 years old. Like, what do I got to prove?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and I don't know, it's just crazy. But growing up though, it's like I had it blessed because like I had a great childhood.
Right.
But I just always chased the people that had less fortunate was more attractive to me.
Right.
Yeah.
And like it just really was. Like I wanted to be the ones that broke into houses. I was the one that wanted to cook meth. Like I was the ones that I just wanted something like the thrill. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I've been chasing, and that's when I started lying. I don't remember from the time I was 12 to the time I was like, I don't know, 26, I even probably told the truth. You know what I mean? Like,
Can you tell us a little bit, like, how did you end up doing meth for the first time at such a young age?
well, see, I had an older brother. Like I said, he was like 14 years older than me. And that was his like drug of choice too.
Yeah.
And I remember one time that he came home for like a little stint. Like he was in and out of jail too. And he came home one time, and I remember I had a friend at the time, a childhood friend, and he was doing drugs too, but he was already smoking weed. And I went through my brother's stuff one day, and I found out he had meth. And this was like, you know,
Did you know what it was when you found it?
I did and I didn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because I remember seeing pictures of it. You remember that, what was that program called back when we was
Dare?
Dare. Dare. And I remember they showing us pictures and telling us about it. And I was like, well, let's try it. And I remember I stayed up for like 2 days.
Yeah.
And then a buddy of mine, he found somebody with crystal meth. And back where I'm from, that was like rare to see. It was mostly just like homemade meth.
Yeah.
And then it just took off from there. It was wild.
Yeah. We talk about that a lot on this podcast, but I'm going to bring it up again. Like, I have a son that's 11.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine, like, him getting high off of methamphetamine,
Yeah.
at his age or even a year
Anytime
from now.
soon,
Dude,
bro.
that's crazy.
Yeah,
man.
bro.
I mean, anytime in his life, hopefully never.
Hopefully, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Hopefully
Yeah.
never. But, like, it just, because, I mean, most of us started getting high young. I know I did. I was smoking weed. But even weed. I look at my daughters who are 14 and 15, like, how was I smoking weed every day at that age, bro?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Thinking we're grown, too.
Yeah.
And I look at them like they're children, bro. They're kids. You know what I mean?
What's even sicker is that the people that were sick enough to put it in our hands
That's, yeah.
were like, didn't you see that I was a kid? You know?
You know what's even sicker is that becoming the people that put it in other people's hands.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because, like, I have a homie that I was, 16? He was 13.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And
But
we
you were
getting high together.
16.
True.
You weren't 21
No.
smoking with a 15-year-old. Those are the things that happen, though. You know what I mean? For
Oh,
sure.
it happened where I'm from more than you can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It was a family affair a lot of times. Like the whole family was doing
A
it.
lot of times, like most of the people I got high with back in the South was like, it was a family.
Yeah.
You walk into a house and everybody, I mean, just this whole, I remember this whole house growing up. It didn't matter what time of the day you could walk in. And I think I started going over there when I was like 14. And no matter what the drug was, I mean, they had it. You know what I mean? And they didn't care if you was 14.
Yeah.
Right.
They didn't care. As long as you pitched in, like, you're welcome.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, still this day, they're probably still doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and you said there was a lot of homemade meth.
Yeah.
So a lot
Yeah,
of people were making it.
Out here, we're not familiar with that. It
Yeah.
doesn't happen out here.
Yeah.
Oh no,
Very funny.
it's wide open.
That soda bottle stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've only seen it on
No, it's
documentaries.
Yeah, me too.
The
the
shake
first,
and
dude, the
bake.
first time I ever seen it tripped me out.
Yeah.
Because I remember I walked in and this guy, I learned how to like make moonshine and meth in the same day.
Oh, wow.
And
The guy was schooling you that day.
yeah,
huh? Yeah.
yeah, well, he'd been up for like a week, but it was a horrible, it was a horrible experience. But
It was
he,
horrible.
it was. But the first time I seen it, I was like, you know, I sat there and watched them put it together, and I was like, dude, this can't be like good. You know, right then I was like, you know, this is not good for you. You know what I mean? But here I am sitting there waiting until it gets done, though. You know what I mean? Because it's just watching it and then like experiencing all that, and it was like in this little bitty shed.
Yeah.
Like, so if it blows up, I'm dead too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but I never thought about that.
Right.
I didn't. That's where my addiction took me. That
Does that happen a lot?
I
I've
seen
heard
it.
of that.
Well, one time, me and him was doing it I just got this trailer. I ain't had this trailer but maybe a week. Nobody even knew I had it. And we were cooking it in my living room. And I remember it busted and it exploded. And it was like, it turned it to like this color, like a purple on the carpet. And I remember I was so geeked out, I hired these carpet cleaner to like try to come get it up. And as soon as they seen it, they're like, nope, we can't do it, and walked out.
Yeah.
They knew what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
You need a hazard.
yeah. And I had to move out. They didn't even get my deposit back or nothing. I just had to leave
Yeah.
because I was just so geeked out and paranoid. Like I knew I was going to go to jail if I'd have told the landlord. And it's just, I remember it was wild.
Will that burn you too if it blows up in
Oh
you?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So did you you got into meth at a young age? Did you finish school or?
I did. I graduated high school. Like my adopted parents one was a teacher. My mom was a teacher, and my dad was like the school superintendent.
Oh yeah.
So it was like education was like huge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you wasn't nothing if you didn't graduate in high school.
Yeah.
And so I about didn't. I was about to get my GED, and then my biological or my adopted dad, he was, like I said, the superintendent. So he had found this program that Tennessee had just started. It was called Credit Recovery. And I remember I was the first kid to ever do it where I'm from, and I actually got like 11 credits in like 3 months.
Nice. You got how many credits?
11 credits in like 3 months.
Okay.
So like it was some little lopo they found, and so I started. That's how I got my high school diploma. Barely. And that's like where I'm from. It's so out of whack. Like they even put like I didn't even notice this until I had to get my high school transcripts for college now, which took me an act of Congress to get. But they even put that I went to rehab on my high school diploma.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
because I was missing for a month.
Yeah.
But it's just I don't know. It's
So what was it like going to treatment at 16 years old?
at first, well, cause see, I was in a outpatient program before.
Okay.
They started making me go because I couldn't quit. I could quit meth long enough, you know, not to pop for it on a drug test, but I couldn't quit smoking weed.
Right.
So I finally my probation officer was like, "Look, it's either inpatient or go to youth authority." You know what I mean? And so finally, I decided to do inpatient, and the place I went to, bro, it was a cakewalk.
Right.
It was out in the middle of nowhere in this big old, I bet it was like 10, 15 acres, whatever, you know what I mean? And there was 2 buildings. One was the adults, one was the kids program.
Right.
And it was like, we stayed in this like trailer, this big like triple wide trailer. It was huge, and bro, that's where like they started taking us to like any like if your drug of choice was inhalants, we went to an Inhalants Anonymous meeting.
Really?
Yeah, if your drug of choice was cocaine, we went to a Cocaine Anonymous meeting. And that's where I like that. That's the wildest meeting I'm telling you that I've ever been into in my life was Inhalants Anonymous in Nashville, bro. It was wild.
I never even heard of that, bro.
I swear, dude, it was like there was like maybe 8 people, 8 or 9 tops, and they all had like 3 of them had like a ring around their mouth, like permanently. And it was like they talk like this, just shot out
Yeah.
from huffing gas
Yeah.
and paint. Because we had a kid in my group he was from like out in the middle of the country somewhere in Tennessee, like even smaller town than where I'm from, and he was like 14 years old and already had a ring around his mouth from like huffing gas. And he was just shot. And I asked him, I was like, bro, you couldn't find meth? You couldn't find any normal drugs?
Yeah.
But no, that was his thing.
Yeah.
And that was the wildest meeting. Like I said, 8 or 9 people, and it was only like a 45-minute meeting. I think it didn't last that long, but it was the wildest stuff I've ever seen in my life. I mean, like I said, this rehab, they took us indoor rock climbing, took us to a hockey game. Like, it was like legit, like it was almost like a vacation.
Right.
And I think that's why I didn't learn nothing, because they didn't press us. We had to do schoolwork because we were kids, but I mean, I didn't. They were getting high in there. You know what I mean? Like, I remember I was a kid in there was called Graham White, and his drug choice was cocaine.
Yeah.
Shocker. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Graham White. But me and him like stayed clean through the whole thing. But everybody else in my whole group like got high on cocaine like this one weekend.
Yeah.
And it was just as like the first time I was like kind of like proud of myself. I was like, yes. But then I went home, and then 3 months later I was high again.
Right.
And I remember like I grew up like I was one of them kids. I grew up with I hung out with the rednecks. I hung out with like the nerdy kids, the goth kids. I hung out with the athletes. Like I was one of them all around people that I didn't care who you was. You know what I mean? As long as you like to party like I did, I'm there with you. You know what I mean? And I remember like when I came home from that little 30 days I did, like I had almost like a homecoming party. Like I had all these like kids that I was growing up with, like just like happy as hell to see me home. And right then I felt like I actually mattered. But of course that would quickly dissolve after that. But I don't know, it just felt good to come home and you seen people that you hadn't talked to in a month, like, hey, where you been? You know what I mean? And I back then I didn't want to say, hey, I just came home from rehab, so I just made up an excuse. But some of them knew where I was.
Right.
You know what I mean? But coming from where I'm from, like you had to hide it. You know what I mean? You like I remember growing up, like boys weren't allowed to cry. You know what I mean? You had to be a man, like man up and do it. And so it was hard for me, like when I first tried to, back then, like it was hard to like show emotions.
Right.
And that's why I guess it really made it hard on me as a kid that I also had like, I'm the only, besides my adopted brother, like blood siblings, I have 2 sisters.
Right.
A twin sister, an older sister, and another half sister. But like, so I had to be like, the one that didn't show emotion.
Right.
So it was hard for me to get clean at first because I every time I would talk about like emotional stuff, like I would just shut down.
Right.
And it was the only way that I could figure to get by was just to lie or hide it up or cover it up. And that's what I'm saying. Like I bet I lied for 14 years straight. I couldn't even tell you what the truth was.
Right.
And it got so exhausting as a kid, like trying to, like, and I played sports, like I did all the sports stuff. I couldn't in high school because, my drug use, and I wasn't a very well-liked kid at that point. But I always, before high school, I played every sport you think of: basketball, soccer, all of it, baseball, football. And the only thing that cared to me though was the only time I felt as a whole was when I was getting high.
Yeah.
And because like growing up, like I would sit there and watch my biological parents get high on the weekends or whenever I did see them. But it's just like growing up out there is just totally different. It's like slow paced living.
Yeah.
You know, coming from a town that even the town in Tennessee that I grew up, I bet maybe has probably right now about 5,000 people. I'd say maybe
Right.
6. And but
That's crazy.
Yeah, and so like like the nearest mall growing up was like 45 minutes each way. So you had to play outside. There's literally nothing to do besides, you know, unless you want to go bowling. I think bowling was like 20 minutes away.
Yeah.
And I remember it didn't take me long to like figure out like once I started getting high as a kid that I knew where I started like meeting the other side of the town people, I would call them, you know what I mean? The other, like, not my typical parents, like, you know, my parents, like I said, were big time in school. So it's like, I got to know all the mayors and the preachers and like all that good stuff. But then when I started getting high, I got to meet their kids who were getting high. And then I started selling weed as a young kid, and it turned south fast.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I remember when I was 18 years old, I got arrested for selling delivery of weed, and dude, that like the way they blasted me in this little paper in the town, just I mean, it was wild. It made even sound like I was Al Capone of marijuana.
Yeah.
For real. Like
How much weed did you get caught
just
with?
a half a pound, a little over a half a pound.
Yeah.
And
It's all right. I'll come-
but I mean, they I remember they wrote in the paper something like, oh, he's, you know, selling weed to kids. I'm like, I'm a kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like all my friends are still 17.
Yeah.
And I remember I my parents, like I said, were big into church too. So I tried to go to church one time after I got out, and I was sat behind these 2 old ladies in church. And like I said, it's a small town, so everybody knows everybody. So when I walk in, like everybody's head turned, like, you know, like they saw the ghost. And I sat down behind these 2 old ladies in church, and they were like, "Hey, that's you know, that's the boy that got caught selling weed to kids." And I couldn't help it. I feel bad to this day. Like if I ever, I'm sure she's passed away now because she was like 80-something years old back then. But I remember I just leaned up between them and I was like, "Hey, I was probably selling weed to your grandson." You know what I mean? Like, you're gonna talk smack about me? Like, it was probably your family buying it from me.
Yeah.
But and then that pushed me away from like church completely for many years, because it's like, you know, why am I gonna go try to get you know, back in touch with the Lord, and when, you know, they're sitting there talking shit about me being a drug dealer.
Yeah.
Like I'm the first one ever to do it.
Yeah.
But, you know, and then after that, like I spiraled out of control even more. I remember I spent my 19th, 20th, and 21st birthday locked up. I didn't even get to buy a beer for my 21st birthday because I was serving a 3-year sentence. And that's when I first got out. After that time I got out, I met my ex-wife, and that was back on Facebook, because I remember I was gone for like those 3 years pretty consecutively. I didn't do 3 years straight, but I did like pretty much the whole 3 years. And I remember I got out, and that was back when MySpace stopped.
Yeah.
And Facebook started. And I remember getting out and trying to reconnect with everybody, and I was trying to talk to people on MySpace, and they're like, "Oh, everybody's got Facebook." And I was like, "What the fuck's what's Facebook?" You know what I mean? Like, and so I remember, I tried to like settle down and like try to like do things right for a change, but of course that didn't last. You know, I'm a dope fiend. You know what I mean? And I, like I said, I met my ex-wife. I got her pregnant, and then, you know, it's the South, so it's like, you know, oh, well, she's pregnant, you gotta get married.
Right.
And so we got married. We should have never got married in the first place, but we got married, and then, like I said, we had the child. Well, like, this is where it gets even worse for me. So we had the child, Adriana. She was about 2.5 months old, and then she died of SIDS. And, well, like I said, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. Like, honestly, God, I wouldn't. It was just a horrible experience. And then, like, the day after it happened, of course, DCS gets involved, right? So DCS shows up to my house, and I'm strung out at this point anyway. You know what I mean? And they come up, and they're like, hey, I need you to take a drug test. And I'm like, bro, you can shove that drug test. You know what I mean? I'll tell you what I fell for, but I'm not going to pee in a cup. And, you know, they're like, oh, this is not going to look good. I'm like, I'm a convicted felon who just, kids passed away, who's a drug addict. It doesn't look good already. It can't look no worse. You know what I mean? So then, like, I remember after that, like, I just kept, you know, that's when I really started, like, then I started breaking into houses, started breaking into cars, like, anything I could do to, like, get just so I didn't have to think about it. That's how messed up my mind was, you know what I mean? And I remember I got put on probation because I got caught. I didn't get caught, but like someone snitched on me for trying to sell like stolen equipment. So they charged me with breaking and entering his house. And that's when I first really started trying to get clean after my daughter died. Was it was about, I don't know, 6 months after she died, maybe 9 months. I remember I went to this little halfway house, and that's how I found the people from out here. There was a guy named Rick that he worked in a halfway house there, and he was from here. And he kept trying to, when I was going to this halfway house, like, he kept trying to get me to come out here. He's like, come to California. And I was like, I don't know, I don't think I'd blend in too well in California. And finally, like, my biological dad was clean at that time, and he started sending people out here. And then one day, it's just I took a leap, and I was like, I might as well let's try it. You know what I mean? But still in the midst of all this is still going. Like, I'm still getting, you know, I got investigated by DCS for, like, I don't know, 18 months after my daughter died. You know what I mean?
So were they, like, investigating you to try to charge you?
It's not to charge me, but, like, it's they were mad because it should have been just like a 6-month investigation and it was over. Yeah. But because I'd got arrested, like I said, in the middle of the investigation, I got it's a child death. You know what I mean? Like, they have to ask the most ungodly questions you've ever heard of in your life. Right. And it's, you know, if it's not, and plus it's the South, so it's like, if it's not seen as like a God's way, then you're a piece of work anyway. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, like, they never tried to charge me, but they want me to answer questions that I wouldn't answer. Right. At that time. You know what I mean? Like, they're like, why are you on drugs? I'm like, what do you mean why I'm on drugs? I've been a drug addict before we even had this conversation. Yeah. You know, and I remember they sent 2 detectives to my house because they thought I was lying to them. And it was like they kept asking my family personal stuff. And then I was also going through a divorce at the same time. To, like, make it all worse. Wow. Like, it's just all, my life was going downhill fast. Yeah. And they were asking me, like, you know, they were just getting personal, you know what I mean, being nosy. That's what DCS does. They just be nosy. And they were like asking me, why am I getting a divorce? Why am I, you know, why is my life just turning upside down? And I'm like, what do you mean I'm a drug addict? Yeah. You know what I mean? And back where I'm from, it was like the DCS building was like right here, and then state probation was like right here behind them, in the building behind it. And I remember it got so bad to where they kept blowing me up one day because they were trying to get the autopsy results because my family got them before they did. And I remember it got so bad, like, they kept calling me. And I remember I just handed my phone to my PO one day because I was in a visit with her. And they came down there. They just walked the building. They just walked down there and talked to me right then. Right. Like, just, like, showing me options for, like, counseling and stuff. But I remember like just sitting there thinking like, bro, I just wanted to die.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what else? You know what I mean? My child died. I'm going through a divorce. I just got out of jail again. Like, I didn't have a pot to piss in. I was living in a halfway house that was like, it was wild. You know what I mean? And I just, that was the first time like my addiction, it took me to a point of like, I was like okay with never coming out of it. Like, why would I? I mean, I didn't have nothing left. I had no hope. And I remember before I came to California, I remember I was sitting in this halfway house, like, it was like nasty, man. Like, they kept having bed bug infestations. Like, it was just dirty. And I remember just sitting outside. I got strung out again, shocker. And I was living in this little camper waiting to get shipped out here. And I was coming off Opanas, like oxymorphone pills. And I remember I was sitting there, like, just, shitting all over myself, puking, like, just going through it. And I just remember, like, I about backed out of coming because, like, I couldn't take it anymore. You know what I mean? I couldn't take the withdrawals anymore. I was ready just to, do what I had to do to go back to it. Right. And finally I just sucked it up, found a way to get high long enough to get on the plane. And when I came out here, like, I was culture shocked, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And when I thought I was coming to California, if you think of California, you think of the beaches.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You think of, like, big cities, and they sent me to Lake Arrowhead. You know what I mean?
What?
No, Running Springs. I went to Running Springs.
Hope Springs?
Yeah.
Bro, I worked there.
Yeah.
That's funny, dude. That place, yeah.
Dude, that place was a joke.
Yeah.
It was a joke. Yeah. And I mean,
it got better after Adam left.
No, it did not.
It closed down after I left, just so you know, dude.
It did not, because when I was there, it was the owner's wife.
Yep.
I mean, she was just getting hammered.
I know.
I remember we was going to group one day, and she just came out just hammered, holding the bottle of wine in her hand. I was like, I was about to ask her for a drink. You know what I mean? Like, for real.
I'm not gonna say her name, but I know exactly what you're talking about. You know what's funny is I was working there, and they ended up promoting me, and I ended up, like, because I didn't work there that long. I think I worked 3 months as a support staff, and then like a month as a supervisor, and I quit, bro. You know what I'm saying? But when I became supervisor, right, she said, hey, you make up your hours. You tell me when you want to come in. You know what I'm saying? We're going to pay you X amount of dollars, which back then for me, I'll tell you what it was. It was $20 an hour. And I was like, bro, I made it, dude. You know what I'm saying? I swear to God, I was like, I made it, right? But
getting out of the teens is a big deal.
It is. It was.
Yeah.
It was.
Right,
I want to tell you, bro, I hated working for her, bro. Like, I actually, because now I'm directly under her, you know what I'm saying? And I ended up quitting. She told me, oh, I need you to come back and do this and do that. I said, you know what? Like, I'm not coming back at all. Like, I'm good. You know?
That place was a joke, bro. I remember we ran out of food 2 or 3 times.
Wow.
And they had to, like, Danny Williams. I don't know if you ever meet Danny. But
I think I have.
Rest in peace. He died. But him and his wife had to go, like, buy us food. And it was like a great place, but, like, it was set up nice, like nice little houses, but it was just ran so poorly that I was honestly okay with just going back to the raggedy halfway house I came from.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then I remember I kept trying to go back to Tennessee. Like, I was homesick. And then that Danny guy, he told me, well, you're going to go try this place out called New Orleans. And I was like, yeah. I just kept making up excuses because I wasn't done. You know what I mean? And I remember, and New Orleans was like brand new.
Yeah.
Because by the time me and the 2 other guys that came with me, we were like the 5th clients to ever be there. And I remember going down there, and I was like, Redlands, you know what I mean? Like, this city's humongous compared to where I'm from.
Yeah.
I was more at home up in Running Springs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that was like my type.
Yeah.
I wanted to stay up there, but there was nothing up there.
Yep.
And then, like, I also wanted to go to the beach, and then they're like, well, you can't really afford the beach. And then once I found out how much it cost to live near the beach, I was like, yeah, I'm cool anyway.
Yeah.
But so I went to New Orleans, and I remember when I first went there, it was kind of weird because like Ron like opened the door and he was like, "Hey man, it's good. Nice to meet you. I'm glad you're here." And told me he loved me and gave me a hug. And I was like, I don't know this dude. You know what I mean? And
He
I
must
went,
have been an NA guy.
huh?
It was Ron.
Oh,
Yeah, Ron.
Yeah. And so I went to, like, I remember when I first went to NA meeting out here, and like I heard y'all clapping. I was like, what y'all clapping for? You know what I mean? Like, this kid just told you you wanted to die and you're clapping, you know? And it was a trip to me because back where I'm from, like, you don't clap, and then they do the chips vice versa. Like, you do chips at the end. And you do birthday celebrations at the end.
Right.
So, like, after you get done with the readings, you just jump straight into it.
Yeah.
And then at the end, you take, like, an extra, like, 10 minutes to stop and then do the readings and all that. So it was like new to me. It was crazy when I first came out here and I seen the unity that they have out here.
Right.
You know, and even when I left and went and came back, like it was the same people that were still like when I walked back in the room after 9 months, they were like just like happy as hell I was there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That was shocking to me. And like I remember even going back and forth in between all this, like I had people from out here like calling me like all the time, checking on me,
Right.
and that was different to me. You know what I mean? Because I'm coming from like a town where nobody gave a damn about you.
Right.
If you didn't have something to contribute, who are you?
Huh.
You know what I mean? So and that's what I was attracted to growing up was like I wanted to be a part of the less than because they didn't care. They didn't have a worry. They didn't have a worry in the world, except to get high.
Right.
And I wanted that. I wanted to have less problems, but more of a good time,
Right.
you know? And even to this day, like I still struggle with like, I reach out, I try to check on the ones that are like trying to help themselves. Like I had to make a boundary. Like if you're not trying to do better, I can't mess with you.
Yep.
And it's heartbreaking because like I sit there and I watch people that I got really close to that are just going in and out and strung out. And you have to create a barrier for yourself because it's never going to get better if you just keep, how can you say it? Like it doesn't get better if you don't want it to.
Right.
And that's what when I got clean this time, like I remember when I first came out to California and the anxiety and all that, like, but I always had it in the back of my mind I would go back. I was always homesick. I never wanted to make California my home.
Right.
I never did. And I guess that's why I left California the first time because everything was getting better and I wasn't ready for it.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? I'm a personal like manipulator.
Yeah.
And like I manipulate every chance I can.
Right.
That's why like Ron like he calls it all the time like I Stein people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For real.
Yeah.
Like I will get over on you if I really wanted to.
Yeah.
And that's horrible.
Yeah.
And you know, I remember when I came out to California the second time, I stayed like a year and a half. I had like 18 or 19 months clean. And I remember I went back home and I still stayed clean for, 5 months. I was about a month away from getting 2 years.
Right.
And I threw it away because I was getting off parole. I was working night shift at a plant that made GPS trucks, that assembled GPS trucks. And I remember I worked night shift, so like I remember getting off at 6 o'clock in the morning one morning, and dude's like, "Hey man, I got some meth," and I just got off probation. And I was like, "Fuck it,"
Yeah.
you know, here I go again. And I remember I came out here for a week, like maybe 3 months after that, for a week to get clean and try to do this again, and I left because like I wasn't ready, and plus I was in love with a woman that loved everybody else too.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But
Been there.
yeah, so like I was in love. You know what I mean? So I went back to using again, and ended up getting arrested and doing this 3.5 years, and thank God for COVID because I'd be serving 18 if it wasn't for COVID.
Right.
And because they It was in the middle. It was right when COVID started, and I was already on parole for 4 years, and I got these new charges for like stealing credit cards, and they were going to give me 14 on top of it.
Damn.
And because I'm a career criminal, you know what I mean? Like I have, you know, I wish I could just say just one, but I have several.
Yeah.
And so they they came back 15 minutes later and like, look, you can either take this 5 years now, or you can serve 18. It's up to you. And I was like, where's your pen at? You know what I mean? Like, let's do 5 years. And good after all the time I'd served in good time, I'd got out in 3.5. But like I said, while I was in there, like this is how it is for me now. Like, when I was in there, like I said, both my adopted parents passed away. First, my mom died in June 2020, and then my dad died 10 minutes later in April of 21. So I came out, I had nothing. And then this is what, like, I think like really molded me, because like I said, when I was standing in the beginning, like I remember the first time I had walked out of prison this time, I was scared to death. I was scared to death because I didn't know where I was going to go. I didn't know what I was going to do. All I knew was when I walked out that gate and I turned around and looked at the building, I didn't want to go back in there.
Right.
So, so my sisters, like, I was talking to my sisters, like, maybe up to a month before I got out, and they were like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. And the only thing they could think of was, we'll fly you to California. I said, for what? Where am I going to go? And they said, well, what are you going to do here? You know what I mean? So I came out here and I stayed with this woman that I knew. I was trying to build a relationship with her, but her, you know, I wasn't ready. She wasn't ready. Her kids were like bringing guns home, growing weed in the house. Like, it was never going to work. It was never going to work. And so then I came back down here to Redlands, and I first asked Ron, you know, to like give me another chance for like the 40th chance, you know what I mean? And he's like, no. So then one day I just came back down here again. I was like, look, man, like I messed up and I'm sorry. And of course, you know, he said yes, you know what I mean? And so luckily it all worked out. But when I came out here, I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know where I was going.
So you didn't initially come out here for treatment? You came out here.
No.
And you got clean while you were in prison?
Oh, while I was in prison. I got clean because, like I said, I'm in the last day I used. We were doing meth and doing, like where I was locked up at, this is what made it so horrible. At night, you had to act like you were asleep. You know what I mean?
Oh, my God.
It was horrible. You had to physically lay there and like cover up and act like you was asleep. Geeked out of your mind.
I've done that before.
Yeah, it was so horrible, and it broke me that last time because, like, for some reason, they knew we were high. You know what I mean? They knew. It's prison. Of course they knew. So I remember they came in that last time right before we got to get up, and I remember this guy I swear like he looked into my soul. You know what I mean? Like I'm just laying there covered up, you know, peeking out with one eye to the side. You know what I mean? And like I remember he just staring at me, and I knew like he knew what time it was. And then that next day I woke up and everybody was getting high again, and I was like, I can't. You know what I mean? Like, I was too tired. Plus, we had to go weed eat cemeteries. So it was 97 degrees. You know, with 70% humidity. Like it's hot. You know what I mean? So I was already mad anyway, and I knew I was tired of doing the same thing over and over. And plus, you know how it goes. They would just be miserable the next day, and there'd be fights, and my sister called me like that next day when my first day clean. She wrote me a letter saying that I hope you change. And she wouldn't let me talk to my nieces or nephew. I mean, I'd stolen from her. I went to prison for stealing from my sister and my parents.
Damn.
Yeah, and I was a scumbag. You know what I mean? Like I didn't care who you was.
Right.
You know, if I could benefit off of you, I would either take it or you'd give it to me. You know what I mean? And that's what, like I said, that's where lying got me. I could lie to whoever to get what I want. and back where, in this old town, and I would use my parents' name while I was stealing from them at the same time. You know what I mean? Addiction took me to some very dark places that, I didn't even know who Johnny was.
Right.
I didn't know who Johnny was until I got clean this time.
Right.
I didn't until I could honestly sit down and look at like what makes Johnny happy. And I remember this time when I first got clean, like, because when I came out here, by the time I started working at New Origins this time, I had 9 months.
Right.
And it was the most, how they say, you can be clean, but not work a program. You're just you're really threading on in thin water.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That was me. Like I was barely holding on.
Yeah.
One, if the wind would have blew in the wrong way and made me mad, I'd have got high if I didn't get to chem. So like I honestly believe, like God's will really knew what He was doing.
Right.
And since then, like, if it wasn't for Narcotics Anonymous, like, I am, like, when I first got started, and this is what also drove me nuts when I came out here, too, because I would sit there and you would hear people in meetings like, oh, I got my career, and I got all this and got all that because of Narcotics Anonymous, and I'm sitting there thinking, bullshit. You didn't get this all because of Narcotics Anonymous. You didn't get this in a meeting. You know what I mean? You didn't get all this happiness. Like, bullshit.
Yeah.
And come and find out, it's what Narcotics Anonymous gives us the chance to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I've noticed is I know what I get without Narcotics Anonymous.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So anything is better than that when we get here.
Yeah.
I mean, the shiny things look cool and they're attractive to us, but
that was like the shiny things was cool because like I said, my parents were like I said, teachers and stuff. So like we had some of the nicer things, but I didn't care about that. You know what I mean? I wanted the happiness that I seen this guy just miserable. I'd watch this. I remember when I can't remember the guy's name, but I remember when I first came out here, this guy was just like mad as hell, miserable. And then when I came out here for the third time, he's still there, still clean, and he's happy.
Yeah.
I said, I wanted that. I wanted that.
Yeah.
And that's why I picked my sponsor, Micah, because, like, it don't matter if Micah's having the worst day of his life or the best day of his life. He's still got that same smile on his face.
Yeah, he does.
And I said, bro, I want that. That's what attracted me to Narcotics Anonymous was you see the ones that really put the work in and put the effort in, and they're happy. I didn't know who I was, so I was never allowed to be happy. I was still, like, I still would get goosebumps all the time, like, thinking, like, when I first didn't have to lie anymore. Like, that was huge to me. When I actually got to tell the truth. Even though I didn't know really what it was. But that was, like, for me, that's what really broke the ice for me is because I knew I didn't have to be somebody I didn't want to be anymore when I came to Narcotics Anonymous. And then when I would tell my story, and people are like, okay, I've done that too. Cool. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I got from Narcotics Anonymous was I didn't have to impress.
Yeah.
Right.
I didn't have to.
We clap no matter what.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You're having a shitty day. Welcome.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
It gets better.
it gets better, and that's I hated hearing that at the beginning. I did.
Yeah.
Like I say, you'd hear all these old timers like, "Oh, it gets better." When?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Michael would always say, "Well, it's not your time; it's God's time."
Yeah.
And I hate hearing that. Because, like, when I first came here, bro, like, growing up, for me, also, like, I struggled with racism. Because, like, where my grandparents grew up, it was racist.
Yeah.
Like, the Ku Klux Klan still takes donations in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
Like, it's really still like that. You don't see it as much anymore, but... So, like, all these things I had to grow up around and then come out here, and it's just... It ain't like that.
No, it's it's a melting pot. Of
Yeah.
everybody. Yeah.
So, like, it's for me, like, I had to, like, not throw away everything I watched growing up, but it was more like I had to, like, realize what's right and what's wrong.
Right.
And that's what also made me a man coming out here was I didn't have to look behind my back anymore. I didn't have to judge someone. I didn't have to, do anything but just be present.
Yeah.
And doing what I do now, like I go from prison to now I'm in nursing school.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, people like me shouldn't be in nursing school.
Right.
And I hear these kids in my class all the time. They're like, they're talking about this kid the other day that one of their patients was in there for like, because he couldn't quit using meth.
Huh.
And I'm like, I just stayed quiet. You know what I mean? Like, that could have been me.
Yeah.
You know, then they were like trying to make fun of, they were like making fun of this homeless guy that was like outside of our school walking up and down the street. And I'm like, shoot, that one more dose of meth and that's me.
Yeah.
I'll throw it all away. It ain't my first time. You know what I mean? So like, Narcotics Anonymous told me in my journey today that, bro, as long as you stay patient, it gets better.
Yeah.
But you got to put the work in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I was one of them ones that came in. That's why it never worked for me in the past, because I would come to meetings and just think, okay, what's going to get better? Let's see.
Yeah.
I never did nothing. I still lied. I still cheated. I still scammed my way out of things, and nothing ever got better. Until I actually put pen to paper, which I hate doing because my writing is like chicken scratch. I put pen to paper, and then, like Michael would always say, things get better.
Yeah.
And then my first sponsor I ever had out here was Freddie Montoya. You remember him?
Yeah. Yeah. I love Freddie, dude.
Freddie was
That dude still pops up on my Facebook, like the memories.
Yeah.
He would be like, "What's up, bro? What are you doing?" You know, what I'm saying? Good fucking dude.
Yeah. Rest in peace. But
Yeah,
like,
rest in peace, man.
I heard he died while I was in prison. I was sad.
Yeah.
But he even told me, like, what do you got to prove? You know, just because you're from Tennessee, we don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't care. We just want to know who you really are. And when I had to, because I remember that's right when he relapsed, and I had to get a new sponsor, and I got Micah. And Micah, like, that's what attracted me to my sponsor too. Was when I first met him, he's like, whatever you tell me, I'll take to the grave.
Yeah.
And I told that man some shit.
Yeah.
And he, meeting people in Narcotics Anonymous now, I've met some really good people. And I get to watch people's life change.
Right.
And I don't get jealous anymore. What makes me happy is you sit there and you watch these people that come in and out of the rooms that never get more than like 45 days, and you see them get 90. Bro, that's what it's about.
It's huge.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And today I actually get happy when I see someone do better, back instead of get jealous.
Yeah.
That's what makes the difference between a boy and a man around here, is once you put the work in and you really become selfless.
Yeah.
And I work with you, so I do more for other people than I ever did for myself.
Yeah.
And I also learned, so like the thing I struggle with today is like I don't treat myself enough, and I'm trying to do better. I'm going back home next week to like buy my dad a footstone instead of stealing from the man. You know what I mean? It's the things we get to do. And that's why you asked me to do this. Like, I didn't hesitate because I've listened to someone's stories and it changed my life.
Yeah.
And no matter what you're going through, like whatever it is, like I was taught to sit down and listen to it.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't care what it is. If it's something minor or something major. Getting it off your chest is huge. And like you wasn't, like I was telling Adam, like where I'm from, you couldn't cry if you was a man.
Yeah.
You couldn't hide it. You couldn't show your emotion.
Yeah.
And when I first started crying, because I remember I went home, it was like a year and a half ago. I guess I went home and I went to this church after like, being gone for years. And I remember I was trying, you could tell I was trying to cry. And I was at this random church that I've only been to like once as a kid. I think there might have been like 15 of us in this whole little church. You know what I mean? And I remember the preacher just walked up to me after the sermon and goes, "Look, bro, like Jesus wept, so can you. I was like, okay. All right. Well, you got a point. So you got a point. Can't argue with that. So once I started getting more vulnerable too, like, you know, that's how I stayed clean, because I just remember all the times of sitting there just wanting to die. You know what I mean? I've also been 50, 150, what they call it, you know, it's different back there, but I've been through the ringer, and I don't wish it on nobody.
Yeah.
I don't. Addiction is horrible, no matter where you come from.
Yeah.
It's
And
the worst prison there is.
yeah, I'd rather much go back to the Tennessee Department of Corrections than have to go do 6 more months of meth use.
Yeah.
For sure, without a doubt, I would do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And sitting there and working in like mental health and addiction, like I see what it does to people, but it humbles me at the same time, because I know that could be me.
Yeah.
I'm no different than anybody.
Right.
I'm no different than the next man that comes in the rooms. No different. And our dates are different. That's it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. It's just, it was hard for me when I first came to California. It was hard for me to like get close to people out here, because like I didn't think y'all would understand. And that was the biggest crock of shit I ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Y'all understood more than anybody ever knew.
Yeah.
And then you see, like I said, you see people, and the men and women that get clean around here and get their stuff back, and then they lose it all again, but they never judge them for it. They're still sitting there loving them when they want to come back and try again.
Yeah.
And that's what, you know, like I said, that's what made me feel home here,
Yeah.
was because no matter how many times I came in and out, the reactions never changed.
Right.
And I was like, okay, all right. You know, for a hopeless dope fiend like me that never, like I said, never told the truth until it was in the late 20s, like, it was okay. You know, and I remember Mike also told me, like, whenever you start being, you know, he said, you can lie to me, but you can't lie to yourself anymore and expect things to get better.
Yeah.
And I sat there and thought about it, and then like when I started telling the truth, and it was, the truth would just start coming out no more. Like I said, that's when I still get the hairs on the back of my neck, like stand up. You know what I mean? Like I don't know who I was. So like I don't know. It's just a blessing to have almost 3.5 years. I shouldn't. You know what I mean? Not from the life I've lived.
Right.
Right.
It's it's been an amazing journey, man. It really has.
So Johnny, I want to ask you about the nursing school and going back to school. What inspired you to do that? Was it some one
My boss?
person?
My boss. Yeah, I remember sitting in his office one day, and he said, "Have you ever thought about being an LVN?" No, not even 30 seconds. No.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Why don't you try it?" I said, "Okay." And I looked into it, and I knew, you know, I'm still going to have to see the nursing board in about 3 months. I think 3 or 4 more months I have to go in front of them. But I just remember he asked me, he's like, "Why don't you do it?" And I'm glad I did. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I just didn't think it was possible, because the nursing school is strict. Like, they background checked you and all that, and I don't know what happened, but here I am. You know what I mean? I guess hopefully they just did a statewide check for right now.
Yeah.
But back, you know, what I'm going to have to do most likely is, like, it's kind of like a parole board hearing. I'm going to have to go in front of the board of nursing and then ask them to, like, let me become a nurse.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to treat it, like I said, just like a parole board hearing. I'm going to go in there and tell them what happened, why I did what I did.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the things I get to do.
And not just that, but the support that you have too, because I know Ron's gonna be right there with you, and being able to write you letters and speak up for you.
Yeah, and
Dr.
Dr. Valdez and like all of them are gonna write me letters. Like I'm gonna have it looking good on paper for the first time in my life.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And your rehabilitation efforts too.
Yeah,
Those
I mean,
are all considered.
and I tried to get I try to get expunged, but in Tennessee, like, it's what sucks too. Like, I can't get my Tennessee felonies expunged out here.
Yeah.
I'd have to go back and do it, and I just don't ever care to go back long enough to do all that.
Yeah.
And then another thing I wanted to talk about. So, you had a daughter that passed.
Yeah.
You know, sorry for your loss, bro. I can't even imagine. Yeah, can't even imagine. But you also have a daughter now.
I do.
Yeah.
And so, and that's what, like, it kind of made me scared. Like, you know, having kids is supposed to be a blessing, but having that child having my first daughter pass away, and I'm sitting there holding her, I was scared to death. Like, I didn't want that to happen again.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, it wasn't unfair to my daughter now, because like I had pushed myself away because of fear. You know what I mean? Like, I was scared to be a dad because what if it happened again? I would lose my shit.
Yeah. How are you gonna survive it?
How am I going to survive it again?
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you, the first time it's an ungodly experience. But, and again, I'm not with the mother. I'm not married. I'm not involved with her. Like, we're two totally separate people. And then, like, this is where it gets interesting. So, like, to make it personal, she somehow gets a hold of my ex-wife, you know, on Facebook.
Yeah.
And then they start attacking me over this. And I remember, I remember telling her, I was like, look, we can go to court if you want to. And so I'm in, like, I might be most likely going to have to go to court for the rest of the process. And it's kind of weird because, like, I wanted to go to court, and it's the first time a convicted felon ever wants to go to court. You know what I mean? But it's the first time ever I've actually done good enough to go in front of a judge. You know what I mean? I'm in school. I work full time. Like, I actually have my stuff. I have my own apartment. Like, I have my stuff together. And having a daughter now, it's like, it's crazy. Believe me, I didn't expect to have a child at 36. I don't recommend having kids at 36. You know what I mean? I don't.
He look right at you, dude. He's 36.
I don't recommend it, but it's a life changer though, because, like, again, it's like I get that chance again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it affected me, like, it really messed me up. You know what I mean? Because instead of being happy, it was just all fear.
Yeah.
I couldn't. I remember telling my sponsor, like, I was like, I want to be happy, I really do, but, like, I'm scared to death. And I'm sitting there holding that kid, and I'm almost in tears. And it wasn't because of happiness; it's because I'm scared. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know, because, like I said, yeah, the first time when my first daughter passed, like, I was getting high, but I semi had my stuff together. You know what I mean? I was also working full time. Like, I was a functional addict for, like, maybe 3 months.
Yeah.
But doing it now, it's like, you know, since I've been clean, it's a different experience, but at the same time, it was harder because I have to process all that again over and over. And then, like, I can't, for sometimes when I do look into my daughter's eyes now, like, I still see Adriana's eyes, my first daughter that passed. And I don't really know how to process it sometimes, but all I know is I just don't use over it no more.
Yeah.
And I call my sponsor, and, like, the things they recommend you to do, I do them.
Yeah.
And then that's what I got from Narcotics Anonymous.
Yeah.
Is all these tools. I don't have to run and hide anymore. I don't have to lie anymore.
Right.
Like, when I want to get vulnerable, I get vulnerable. It's what we do, and it's hard. Don't get me wrong. The hardest thing I ever had to do is swallow my pride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the hardest thing I ever had to do. Let that ego go.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I didn't think it would ever be possible for me because I'd lied so much.
Right.
But, like, having a daughter now, it's a blessing. It really is. But at the same time, it's, you know, with what I went through, it's a learning experience.
Yeah. But the beautiful thing is, bro, like, you're like, cause I mean, me and you, we've we talk, but we don't ever talk like deep like this. And like, so like I'm getting like a whole different picture of who you are, bro. Right. And like, you're not doing any of this alone, bro. I think that's so imperative, bro. Like a lot of times, like we'll have like thoughts or feelings that are uncomfortable to talk about, or even embarrassing, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like thoughts of like, I don't know if I ever talked about some podcasts, but like in the past, I've had thoughts like I'd rather be a drug addict than be a parent, because being a parent is way too fucking hard. And that's like an embarrassing thought, bro. Like what kind of real man, thinks to himself, I'd rather be high right now than be a good father. You know what I'm saying? But those, I wouldn't say are normal thoughts, right? But they're natural thoughts for somebody like me, bro. But having people like Mike, having people like my sponsor, having people like Juan and David, and like these people that I could really entrust in my thought process. First of all, when I have really bad negative thoughts, bro, my sponsor is always going to be the first one. You know what I'm saying? If I have really bad behavior, probably Mike's going to be the first one. But like if it's bad thoughts, I know that like Willie will probably just laugh at my thoughts, because I'll be fucking so like, I'm such a piece of shit. Why do I feel this way? Why am I thinking this way? And he'll be like, dude, you're an addict, first of all, and you're human, right? And so, but like,
isn't there's still, because I've talked to Willie, and then I've talked to you about certain things, and like you'll laugh.
Yeah.
And it's a relief, even though you didn't even say anything. Yeah. I'm relieved that like, okay, it's my disease working in my brain.
Yeah.
This is not real.
Willie laughs at me all the time.
Just the laugh is a relief.
Yeah.
And then we chop it up and talk about it.
I get it though, because like when I first found out she was having a kid, like I was ready to run.
Yeah.
And even like once we started arguing when my daughter was born this time, she's like, you can walk away, and I about said okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I about did. Clean had no reason to. Just because like I didn't, like you said, my brain told me I don't have to deal with it. And I, which is, like you said, that's sick as it is. Like I was okay with it.
Yeah.
I was fine. I could have walked away with no harm, no foul. But I'm glad I didn't.
Yeah.
I'm glad that, I get to be there. It is, yeah, we don't get along sometimes, but I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So no, I don't blame you at all. You know what I mean? Like, even when before my first daughter passed, I was getting high, and bro, there was times I wouldn't even go home.
Yeah.
And I lived with my parents. You know what I mean? Like, and so to my daughter, it's like I didn't go home because I'd rather go get high. I'd rather go sell dope. That's what I knew. But this time it's like I felt even more sick because, I'm clean. I'm in school. I'm working. Like, what? Why do I not want to be there?
Yeah.
But it was more the fact that I just didn't want to deal with the fighting and the arguing.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I talk a lot of crap, but like, I hate fighting and arguing. I don't want to do it anymore. I don't.
Yeah. And I just, for me, like, I understand that just because I feel a certain way or think a certain way, that's not the reality. I love my children. I would kill. I would go to prison. I would die. I would give up my breath just so they can have more breath. Like, there's nothing that I wouldn't do for my kids. But we find ourselves in sticky thought processes and feelings, and if we don't have people to be able to bounce that off of, bro, I'm fucked, bro. That's what 12 years clean, bro. If I don't have people to bounce ideas off of, thoughts off of, and feelings off of, dude, I am fucked, bro. Because left to my own devices, bro, I'm off to the races, bro. And it'll be a slow progression, but I'll start throwing my life away one person at a time, bro. One person at a time. Self-sabotage is a form of self-harm, and I'm good at it, bro. I will create scenarios in my head, and I will be resentful at people for shit that's not even fucking real, bro. And
shit that they might do.
Yeah.
That probably won't.
100%. And so like, for me, like, having the first person I ever learned how to trust, like, was my sponsor.
Yeah.
After I trust him, something happened to my brain, something happened to my spirit, and they said, oh, if we could trust him, then maybe we could start trusting other people, right?
Yeah.
And then it just kind of just grew and grew. I don't trust everybody. I don't confide in everybody. You know, one thing I like to say, like, if I don't call you on my bad days, like my real bad days, and you have no idea who the fuck I am and how hard I struggle and how hard I fight on a daily basis just to fucking stick around. But I'm more open to new people. I'm more open to new opportunities to get to know people and build relationships with. You know what I mean? So
no, I get it. I'm somewhere like I don't confide in a lot.
No.
And like, you know, working in mental health, like sometimes I probably look crazier than the people I deal with, because like I'm sitting there talking to myself because I'm nervous to tell somebody. You know what I mean? But for me, like sometimes just talking to myself and having a full blown conversation with myself, you know, like it gets it off my chest. You know what I mean? And it's not like I don't have people to confide into. It's because, you know, my brain will start telling me like, well, they don't want to hear this. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? They don't need to hear this. But when I do actually tell somebody, which is usually my sponsor first thing, it's a relief. And just because it's like the reaction I get with Mike is it's the same day in, day out. Okay, cool. You know, it never changes. Okay, cool. All right. And it's back to things are back to being okay. You know what I mean? It's just wild, man.
All right, Johnny. You got anything else, Adam?
No.
All right. So our last question for you. If you could give one piece of advice to somebody who's seeking recovery and struggling right now, or early in recovery and struggling right now, what would that be?
My one bit of advice, for sure, it would definitely have to be like, stop being scared and just do it. Like Nike said, just do it.
Yeah.
It's gonna be the hardest thing that you ever had to do, but it'll be the easiest thing to ever become.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's if you're struggling and you really want to get better, like if you have to, call me. I'll come get you.
Yeah.
You know, like do what they did to me, and that was just show up, and I don't care if you don't even want to talk. Show up and just sit there.
Yep.
Just do it. Whenever you can, please just do it.
All right. Thank you, Johnny.
Thank you,
You're
Johnny.
welcome.
We really appreciate you coming out.
You're welcome.
Make sure you guys like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, share this message with anybody who you feel needs to hear it. Make sure that you guys follow us on IG and TikTok, which is the Message Hope Podcast _ between each word. And we will talk to you guys next week.
But you'll never know unless you walked up in my shoes. As someone who struggled with addiction in the past, how does it feel to be able to give hope to others who are still struggling now?
You know, it's such an honor to be able to hear other people's experiences of life, to see how when faced with the very thing that was sent to destroy you, kill you, and take you off forever didn't, but rather you have been given a second chance to give hope and be a light for those who are still in the dark. So don't be afraid to share your message to the world. You never know whose life you might be saving.